Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We have gathered 3 business continuity experts to discuss their best practices for safeguarding people and facilities from weather risks. I'm Cortland Keith, Industry Manager and Meteorologist with StormGeo, and I will be hosting today's webinar. StormGeo is a global provider of advanced weather intelligence and decision support services. Businesses rely on StormGeo to help them maintain business continuity, protect assets, and maximize productivity. Now, we have 3 guests here today. Thank you for joining us. Let's start by having each of you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your role and provide us some background about your banks and where you have key asset located. David, if you want to go ahead and start us off.
Absolutely. Good morning. With Frost Bank, and we are in Texas only. We've got about 195 properties that I maintain, about 150 financial centers in Texas. And my role with Frost is I'm the statewide facilities manager. My team manages all of our properties and facilities. And I've been doing this for Frost for about 21 years now.
Great. Natalie, you want to continue?
Hey, good morning, Cortland. Thank you. My name is Natalie Perenio, and I'm the Business Resilience Manager at First Horizon Bank. The Business Resilience team is responsible for crisis management, business continuity, incident response, and disaster recovery. First Horizon recently merged with Iberia Bank, and as a combined company, we have approximately 8,500 associates in 460 banking centers in 11 states across the Southeast US. We also have a number of wealth management and financial offices that are across the country. But as a much smaller organization, my focus was much more condensed, and now as a larger organization, weather is certainly something that we do on a daily basis.
Awesome. Kyle?
I'm Kyle Pukta with Regions Bank. I'm over incident response management for Regions, which we are in 15 states, from Texas over to the Atlantic coast into the Carolinas, and then up into Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, and then down to Miami, Florida, and everything in between. So I've got about 1,200 branch locations and almost 30 corporate-ish type buildings with almost 20,000 associates. And I've been in this role for almost 10 years.
Nice. So you each, you're all 3 at banks, but you each have different focuses when it comes to severe weather. A focus on safety of employees and customers, and a focus on maintaining facilities and protecting assets. Natalie, what are some of your main concerns, you would say, when you're dealing with a severe weather event?
Our main concern and top priority is the safety of our associates. We also want to make sure that we strike the right balance in assisting our clients in a time of need if there's impending weather events, but also ensuring that our associates are safe and that they can, get home to their families. So finding that right balance is certainly something that we focus on a lot in ensuring our safety of our associates and our clients.
Great. And David, from a facilities perspective, what are your main concerns when you're dealing with a severe weather event?
Well, the safety of our employees and then our tenants, of course, and also the well-being of our facilities, after a storm. On the facility side, I head up an emergency management team that mobilizes, for example, in an event like a tropical system coming in the Texas coast. And so we're very proactive on that and have a team ready to stand by. We want to do damage assessments on our facilities and, if needed, any restorations so that we can make sure our facilities are safe for our employees and our customers to come back in as soon as possible.
Great. And Kyle, would you say you have similar concerns as Natalie from a safety perspective?
Most definitely. I think that has really evolved over the last 10 or 15 years when I was in risk, and then I was in this role of, it's not just concern about the associates, but as Natalie said, make sure that they have enough time to get home safely, that they have enough time to prepare. But really, preparation, I think, is the key that our associates are aware of. In fact, just yesterday, I communicated with one of the storm meteorologists about some of the spring forecasts for severe weather in the South. And we were working on the messaging, and the reference was of 2011. And those that remember 2011 in the South was a very active year. And we were trying to temper that message with not scaring everybody. So just giving them the information. And then another example is this morning, I sent an update out to our branches in Arkansas, Southern Missouri, Illinois, Indiana about the impending ice storm this week, and just making sure that they had their business resilience plans ready, that they had all their contact information, that they knew what to do if they needed to close the branch early or open late.
Okay. So with that, you kind of mentioned a few different weather events. What weather events cause the most impact to your business?
Hurricanes. The only good thing about a hurricane is we have some notice. Outside of that, that's the only good thing, because sometimes we'll start tracking the storm with Storm Geo's information, a week in advance. I love it when they fall apart. I got a lot of joking this year because there was a Hurricane Kyle, and it just went straight off in the Atlantic and didn't do anything. And I said, that's how I want them all. Mm-hmm. But really, when we see something coming that far enough in advance, we do have the advantage of preparing and getting everybody's attention. And basically, you get to a point where it's hurry up and wait. You're all ready, everyone, and then it's what's going to happen with it. With the severe weather in the spring and other times, of course, that's much more complicated because you will have very little warning most of the time. So you just need to react fairly quickly on that, and much as the winter weather season also.
David and Natalie, would you say, hurricanes are the same type of concern for you, the most concern, or is there something else you pay attention to the most?
Well, hurricanes definitely have the most concern. We have, 3 coastal regions that can be directly impacted. We have additional regions that can be impacted secondarily from the right size system. And so we have a big risk there. And we also have a pretty good plan, and we start way ahead of time. Storm Geo is a big part of that planning and coordinating. And we use that and to mobilize and to be ready.
Yeah, hurricanes are a big risk just based on our locations, along the Southeast and the Gulf Coast. And but I would agree, we've got hurricanes pretty down pat these days, especially after this active year that just passed. But I agree with Kyle. It's those events that we can't prepare for and plan for. So the tornadoes and these ice events that we just kind of have to wait and see what the impact to our business is, and the impact to the community and our facilities.
Yeah, last year was very active. Hopefully we have a better year this year. I guess we will see during hurricane season. But we did mention, some of you mentioned some tools that you use. Obviously, with all these different types of weather events, you have to prepare differently. David, what tools do you use to plan for upcoming weather events for your facilities, whether it be snow, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever it may be?
I went out and found Storm Geo years ago, primarily for the tropical season, hurricanes. Those are the biggest impacts. And so that is a key tool that we use. There's a lot of questions. So when you go in, the time when you go in, if you go in, if it may not be safe, depending on the size of the storm. So that's a key tool that we use, and that determines when we mobilize. We also use Storm Geo winter weather events. that can happen, severe weather events. And so our business continuity serves as a hub to kind of communicate these severe weather events out to our different lines of business. And so it's kind of it's a tool that we share with our business continuity teams, and they are the communicators out to the rest of our company. And our facilities teams use this to react accordingly to depending on the storms that are coming, whether it's winter, severe weather, or whether it's, tropical in nature.
Great. And Kyle and Natalie, what about you? Do you have any tools in your toolbox from Geo, other tools? What do you use to prepare for these events?
Yeah, certainly Storm Geo is, one of our most valuable tools. We, get a great unbiased forecast and report from the meteorologists. We try to shy away from local news stations. They try to sensationalize the weather and sell commercials. So the meteorologists do provide us with excellent reports and an unbiased opinion and site-specific forecasts. So that way we truly get a good understanding of our impact zone and what it would look like, after the weather event is over. We utilize an emergency notification system to quickly communicate with our associates. So based on weather events, if we have market early closures, we'll send a text message to our associates to quickly communicate, or even to poll our associates to see if they might need anything from the company and to ensure their safety.
Great. Kyle?
Natalie just summed it up perfectly right there, that it's a very unbiased scientific view. It's not worried about ratings. It's not worried about making sure people stay tuned in. Many times I will get emails from everybody going, well, I was watching channel so-and-so and they said it's not doing that. Or this app on my phone says something totally different. So having a very unbiased and to the point forecast just helps out a lot. I mean, I start every day by reading my Stormwatch footprint email that comes through. That kind of gives me an idea of that day and what to start planning for in the future. And when those start updating throughout the day, something's going on because the forecast that continues to change. And we also supply that to some of our leadership across the bank so that everybody's aware and they can't say, I didn't know about something. But one of the other things that helps us with not just severe weather, but our facilities group uses the dashboard to drill down to specific branch locations for roofing projects. If they're going to put a roof on and it takes 3 days to put a roof on a building, they want to be able to look at it and see what the forecast is going to look like 3 days out for that exact location, not for the huge city or the state, but for that location. So that's been a huge asset to our facility group for any type of repair and construction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you would say, having this site-specific information makes things a lot more efficient because you're not having to, kind of generalize and make guesses, correct?
Yeah, when we have to drill down to a specific location, that helps out a lot.
Okay. So,
Cortland, I have 2 things to add to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to add into that. So, one thing I've observed from Storm Geo is their forecasting, especially on tropical events, seem to be a day or 2 ahead of the most public outlets. So you start to get more information sooner when maybe other normal outlets have not picked up on that or are not forecasting for that yet. It's been my observation. And one other tool that I'll mention that might be helpful is we have an intercompany EOC. And so if we have a major event like a hurricane coming, we have a designated space down in a basement of our campus, and key lines of business managers are invited to go down there, attend and get briefings and make decisions. It becomes a command center. And that becomes just a communication piece out to the different lines of business. So that's another tool that we use in conjunction with Storm Geo.
Okay, great. So David, I'll hand this to you in terms of kind of preparation and you mentioned planning in the EOC. Do you do any type of training for your employees to make sure that they're comfortable executing your weather action plans?
Yes, our business continuity team does have some training material that's, a lot of it's common sense. When let's just use a hurricane as an example. You need to secure items in your office and secure items in your desk and important papers, put them away. And in some cases, if PCs are on the ground, we'll pick those up or we may cover them. It just depends on the size of the storm, where it's at. So there's some protocols, checklists, if you will, for individual employees to follow, and they set up call trees. And, so after the storm, if there's power issues, they're able to reach out. The management is able to reach out to the employees. Now, my team, we prepare very intentionally. We have to be ahead of the storm and make decisions ahead of time. And when we do mobilize, we go in 100% self-sufficient. And so we bring outside resources and assets. We've learned that you can't always rely on local resources and assets. And so we bring those in with us. And so that's why it's important to know, what to expect. And we get that information from Storm Geo when it's a good time to go in. And, we do our quick damage assessments. We bring generator power. If we have a branch that's not damaged, but we want to open it up, we'll run it on generators so that we can go ahead and serve our customers.
Great. So Natalie, you did mention, you kind of focus on the safety and kind of preparedness of your employees. Do they have any type of training or what do you do for action plans for them? Or do they have steps they follow? Is this kind of a routine thing or will it catch them by surprise?
Yeah, we like to have an annual training on business continuity responsibilities that all associates will get exposed to from the corporate training perspective. So all associates are able to understand their role and responsibility in an event, whether it's a power outage or, a tropical storm or, an infrastructure or a network issue. But kind of closely on the business continuity and crisis management team side, we do twice a year hold trainings or conference calls for tropical weather and then winter weather, just to review our response strategy. Everybody, and we also make sure we have the meteorologist on the line. Everybody looks forward to getting the latest seasonal forecast. And then we can kind of key on site specific projections for, the tropical or the winter weather. And it makes sure that our associates and our leaders are comfortable with our plan going into, that particular event.
Okay. And Kyle, would you say kind of similar on your end?
Yeah, well, my office produces a weather response guide every year that we update. That's got an overview of our response effort. It's got the checklist for various people, mainly in the branches, since that's really what we're dealing with as far as the vast majority of the people. Some guidance, some sample forms, formats, and we produce that every spring before hurricane season. And then throughout the year, we make edits and changes to it. So it's pretty much what everybody has in their hand the entire time, literally and physically, because most of them, even though they can put it on their phone or whatever, they still like to print it out and have it in their hand in case there's power or they lose the cell coverage or anything like that. So, and we ask them to review that every time we issue a new one out. And then from there, most of the markets, especially the coastal markets, they'll even have more in-depth training for all of their people on how to respond before, during, and after any type of major weather event.
Okay. So Kyle, Let me give you a scenario. Let's say you received a threat advisory from Storm Geo that a winter event is forecast in the next couple of days. What are some of the critical steps you're taking to ensure business continuity for that specific event?
That's pretty much what I did this morning.
Yeah.
Leadership of the market leadership in the areas that will be impacted, and then our people from our corporate response team, from our facilities group, our corporate security group, human resources, and just sent them an updated forecast from Storm Geo for the next few days, saying, everybody wants to know the timing. So kind of give them an overview of the timing, what to expect, some of the impacts from it, hazardous travel, power outages, and then when it should be clearing up. So I do that mainly to get it on their radar, well, no pun intended. And then I'll keep a really close eye on that. And then with the forecast changes, lessons, intensifies, then I'll send additional updates for that. But I know that the markets themselves are already addressing it. They're meeting with their associates. They're making sure they have all of their updated information in our mass notification system. If we have to do an early closure or a delayed opening, that they can get the word out fairly quickly as far as that's concerned. And then watch the actual impact of it. Hopefully it becomes a non-event, but if the ice would come through, then we would look at travel issues for opening branches, down power lines or damage to our facilities from the ice. And then if there is some damage, then we would go on for that to start addressing that with our corporate real estate group and corporate security and everyone else for more of the corporate level. Whereas the markets are dealing with it right then. They're not going to be out and about, but we can start moving some people in and some resources.
Natalie and David, what about you in that situation?
Very similar strategy to what Kyle referenced. And it really, I think our response is similar depending, and it really doesn't depend on the situation, whether it's a hurricane or severe weather or an ice storm. Our response and our strategy is similar, to exactly what Kyle mentioned. We also like to utilize the Storm Geo Vortex portal. We can get really good graphics and updates for senior leadership in our reports that show, snowfall totals or tropical storm wind speed projections and timings. And so that's a really cool feature that allows me to streamline my focus on more preparedness and response versus, predicting the weather or, becoming a weathercaster for the company. So I've really utilized that a lot with this recent hurricane season. And then having our senior leaderships kind of thinking through long-term impacts. If we need staff relocation or shifting workload to another area that might not be in the impact zone. Keep calling key clients ahead if we think that there might be any change to our normal business operations. So just providing fact-based information to those senior leaders ahead of the actual incident or the event. It keeps us engaged and on the right path.
David, you as well?
Yes, and very similarly, we have, pretty much the same. That was a good summary. We have a potential event coming up this week up in our North Texas area. And so, we have some potential of some icing. And so what will happen is we will start sharing Storm Geo weather updates with our regional management up there. If we do have some accumulations that could, impact travel, then we'll get on a bridge line call with the regions or multiple regions or whatever region's being impacted, and we'll give them the data that we have. We'll give a facilities update. We will, depending on the timing, we will pre-treat our facilities or post-treat afterward, and so that our retail and our customers can come in, and be safe driving in our properties, walking up on our sidewalks. And so we do occasionally, we'll have a delayed opening, as Kyle mentioned, or an early closure, just depends on the timing of the weather.
So you guys kind of mentioned before, you talk with our meteorologist, and as Storm Geo customers, you're able to directly consult with our team of meteorologists. Natalie, what are some of the key questions you or your executive team ask the meteorologist to inform your decision-making process?
Our leaders certainly don't shy away from asking questions when we have the meteorologist on our conference calls. And their answers are definitely helpful in their decision-making process. And a big focus a lot of times is on timing. When will the tropical storm force winds arrive? So that we can ensure that our associates are home safe, or when will they subside? So that way, we know it's safe to get back on the roads and maybe, reopen our locations. Understanding when the temperatures will get above freezing, when we'll start to see some cloud breakage, if it's a, winter weather event. So that way the roads might become passable and it's safe for our associates to travel. So, from a business standpoint, having the meteorologist on our conference calls is really informative, and they also understand the forecast, but help us and guide us from a business perspective to those right decisions for the company and our associates, clients, and community.
And Kyle, what about you? What are some of the questions and key knowledge based items do you ask?
It's the timing. That's what they want to know. I found that it helps me if I'll talk to the meteorologist before our call or before our meeting to say, hey, listen, here's what we're looking at. Here's the type of people that are on the call. Here are going to be some of the rough questions they're going to want. And then when we have the call, I'm more prepared. The meteorologist is more prepared. But it's the timing. It's the timing of when they're going to start feeling the initial impacts, and then the timing as far as when's it going to improve? When can we start putting boots on the ground? When can we start looking for damage from our facilities group? And the meteorologists are all great about being patient with some of the questions. I mean, some of the, they'll even say, hey, I was watching my local weather and they said storm's going to go north and you said south. And the meteorologists are always so patient and it can explain it in a layman's terms so that everyone can understand it, and always are willing to answer as many questions that are out there. I'm usually the one that has to cut it off. When someone's asked the same question, when 3 different people have asked the same question over 15 minutes, I cut it off at that point. But it's really some reassurance. I mean, they've seen the updates from Storm Geo. They've seen some of my updates, but just being able to ask questions, or they might think of something that I hadn't even thought of, or a location, and they're always very well prepared. And so I think it gives everybody a good feeling that they talk to someone directly from the source, and now we can start going on with our planning.
Great. And David, what about you? Similar for facilities? Is it mostly timing or what else?
Well, last year I got the opportunity to ask lots of questions in regards to tropical systems, right? And so, yes, I usually start the conversation off as I have watched your video updates, okay, and I have read your email updates. So I'm up to date on that, but I have some more questions. And they typically revolve around a short period of time. Timing, I'll ask questions like, the track and the intensity, and does it have the potential to rapidly intensify? And then I always ask the question, what's your confidence in this forecast? I want to know, this is low, this is high, I kind of want to know where you're at on that. And so we've had the opportunity to do that quite a bit in recent times.
Great.
And we like that. We like to share that information, with other lines of business, with our EOC, if we opened it up, stand it up, or just internally with facility teams.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's a great thing about our meteorologists is, like you said, with confidence and uncertainty, they're gonna let you know if there's some uncertainty in the forecast. So it creates a great dialogue. So moving to kind of the big elephant in the room, we have to talk about it and address it. COVID has brought a lot of sudden changes over the past year. Natalie, what kind of changes have you had to make to your planning or procedures, and do you expect these to be long-term changes or temporary?
Well, kind of the COVID impact on our weather response has definitely forced us to change course. Our focus in tropical events was evacuating, if it was necessary, relocating staff outside of the impact area. But with COVID, that's not something that we had the luxury of doing. So, we like to ensure that the senior leaders remain in touch with their associates, and that our connectivity at home, if we're working from home, remains stable from a productivity standpoint. If it doesn't, and we do see a large scale outage from a data perspective, it might drive a larger number of associates into the office if they can't connect at home. So thinking through those types of challenges in this new COVID world has been, is something that we've talked about at that crisis management level. Hopefully we'll get to see some movement back into the office, as vaccines become more available, around the country. And I'm not sure if it'll look exactly the same as we did pre-COVID, right? We still need to maintain a lot of those safety precautions and measures that we have in place for the time being, but certainly looking forward to a little bit more normalcy for collaboration and development inside the offices, just kind of what we're used to.
And David and Kyle, what about you? Kind of what changes have you had to make in planning or procedures, both in safety and facilities?
I think what Natalie said it as far as having so many remote workers. The building I'm in right now typically would have between 1,200 and 1,400 people in it. Now it's about 100 over a 24-hour period. So all those other 1,000+ people are working from their homes. If there's a power outage, across a large area, in this building we have generators. We're not going to lose power. But now that we have all of our people out, we have to look at power outages, not just at our facilities, but also the surrounding area. And we did have an instance this last year, can't remember which name because there was so many, but it was a storm that impacted the Pensacola, that we had several hundred people from our ops center there working from home that we had to bring them in. The issue, but however, some of the law enforcement groups had the roads blocked off, and we had to get people in. So we had to come up with a form that they could show on their phones to allow them back in. So now I would say, as far as with COVID, we're not just mainly concerned about our owned facilities. We're also looking at the surrounding area as far as how that could impact the workflow if there's some extended power outages.
David, is that similar for you?
Similar, COVID forced a lot of our company to work remotely, and we did that very successfully. We never closed our facilities. We went to appointment only, and lobbies and motorbank facilities continued to stay open, as well as our customer service. Obviously, on the facility side, that impacted, how we do facilities, vendor visit protocols. That was a big impact, and had to change the way, we let vendors show up and get into our facilities, and had to go through that. In regards to weather response, we had to mobilize more than once last year due to tropical systems, and not a lot changed there on our end. You still have to go down, you still have to do damage your facility, and you have to make sure they're safe for our employees and customers to come back to. So we took all the necessary precautions, but we still had a job to do. Do that.
So, Natalie, do you see any of these changes, and Kyle too, that might be permanent changes moving forward? Is there something that you did that you realized was a better way to do things that you might keep moving forward?
I think we're still evaluating all that. We're still in a lot of world of uncertainty at this point. We do desire to, to get back to normal and have our associates return to the office. There are a lot of areas in financial institutions that we do need a team of associates on site working, so and especially in the banking centers and our retail associates that are more of our front lines. So I think it's a little bit too early to tell, but I do think more likely we'll return to normal, when it's time.
Great. And Kyle?
Yeah, I think, Natalie's right. We keep getting hit with what's it going to look like? And it's like, it's still too early. We're still trying to figure everything out. I do have a feeling that you will see a stronger remote workforce, especially for the people that, is there a business reason for them to be in a facility?
Mm-hmm.
Other than we just want to see everybody here. I think most of the vast majority of the groups that did move remote, some groups that said before this said it was impossible for them to move remote, they were remote in 2 days. Many groups actually have seen their production actually go up. So I think we'll look at all of the different types of work, who needs to be here, who can do remote. A lot of the guidance we've been reading in surveys say about 75% of workers want a mix. They like to work from home, but they also like to come in the office 1 day a week, 2 days a week when they need to. So I think you'll see some more flexible work situations going forward.
Yeah,
that's
hybrid
right.
model, I agree. Determining flexibility and productivity together. So agree with that, Kyle.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of us are kind of evaluating. It's interesting how that has made our environment change. So we've talked a bit about, preparing before the storm, the tools you use during it. But after the storm has passed, David, I'll hand this to you. What are some of the steps you take to ensure you're kind of back to business as soon as possible? Or back to normal, I'll say.
Right after the fact. We've done our damage assessments. We've identified, what facilities may have damage. Some of them can be long-term damage. They could be completely flooded. The interiors have to be rebuilt, or maybe we have some extended drying remediation projects going on. We will typically get a facility open if it's safe for employees and customers to come in, even maybe while we're finishing up. But really, some of that depends on after the storm, what your staff availability is too. Sometimes that's a challenge. Sometimes facilities can be ready and available, but staffing is a problem because the region, it does not have power, or it has, lots of infrastructure damage and things like that. So every storm is different. We've learned there's different impacts and different aftermath. Every storm is different.
Interesting. And Kyle, would you say similar or different in terms of steps you take?
Yeah, even after the storm hits, we'll have calls and I'll send out an agenda, and every once in a while someone will say, well, why aren't we getting a forecast from Storm Geo? We need to know what the weather is going to be like beyond, if there's without power, if we're trying to work on some damage to branches and thunderstorms that come through, we need to know that information also. So we continue to look to use a lot of the Storm Geo information beyond that for at least the next few days. But as David said, every storm's different. I mean, I'm trying to think of two that were even close. I mean, every single one has different situations, different challenges. I remember a few years ago when Hurricane Harvey hit, and then a week later we're back into Florida with hurricane down there. That these things move pretty quickly during the tropical season, and you just constantly have to get that information coming in, and so that you can make plans, either it's pre-storm or post-storm.
Great. So I will say this to the attendees who are watching right now: if you currently have any questions, please submit them in the question box and we will ask them momentarily. But before we close out and move to those submitted questions, I'd like to ask each of you to start our Q&A off. So Natalie, you can start us off. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask each other about your operations and preparedness planning?
Yeah, I mean, outside of weather events, what have you guys utilized Storm Geo for? Has there been any business decisions or things that might have caught you off guard that you normally wouldn't go to Storm Geo for, but they've been able to help and provide you guidance? I can say that we've utilized the Storm Geo resources for discovering or understanding weather impacts when making a decision to stand up an operational center. So making sure, that we're not putting ourselves at risk when we're looking into, deploying a larger building that might be more critical to our operations. And so is there anything like that you guys have utilized?
Well, you mentioned it a while ago, Natalie, about the portal that I think some of the people I work with that have access to it are intimidated by it. And I'm trying to explain it to them that it's not that intimidating, but that when we can superimpose our branches with the radar or with the path of the storm, it's in color, but I want to say it's black and white as far as here are the branches we have to be concerned with. And a group that's really utilized that has been our human resources group, that are more concerned about associate impact after the storm and our associate assistance program. That gives them a really good idea, using our branches as reference points, where we may have associates that are impacted that live in the area. So the portal has just been fantastic. And in fact, I noticed something last week that was an addition to our section on the dashboard, where it had a power outage option, where you drop down and it shows those branches that are threatened by potential power outages, which is what I had a meeting last week for an hour about, because branches want power back. They want to get up and running. They want to know how fast they can. So we've been having these discussions about how we can report it, but this gives us an advanced idea of what areas may be impacted by that, which really hope to utilize that more into the next year.
And David, do you have any add-ons to that?
I think I use most of the tools available from Storm Geo. One thing that we did pre-COVID is we'd have an annual conference internally each year. And it started off as a tropical system hurricane kickoff, and then it grew into an all hazards kind of conference. But I would always invite someone from Storm Geo in to be a guest speaker. And so they'd come in and speak to all of our senior management and different lines of business from all the regions, and explain, the previous hurricane year and do the forecast of what they're seeing coming this year. And that was always well received. Did a good job explaining what hurricanes are, how they work, how they impact, surge and all those kinds of things. So everyone always enjoyed that segment.
So back to you, David. Do you have a question for the group on your end?
I am curious, since I head up facilities and I actually head up the mobilization team when we go. I'm curious how other banks respond from a facilities restoration damage assessment process? I'm just always curious about that.
I think one thing we do, and I think one thing that's changed over the time, 10 years ago, it was we wanted people on the road and going into the areas while the storm was still hitting almost. It was like, we've got to get there. I think now the philosophy is more, let's be patient. Let's sit back. Instead of moving generators a couple 100 miles to get power back on, let's give it a day or so. Let's see what it looks like for the power restoration. So I'd say on one hand, as far as getting out there, we're a little more patient than we used to, but we wait until the locations are safe as far as from weather, security. I'm in corporate security, so we make sure that the area is secure. And then we send in our assessment teams, and they will do their assessment. It's all on an iPad now. Instead of having to submit it on a laptop or whatever, they just bring an iPad in and they can start making the damage assessments, whether it's more landscaping issues, whether a branch fell through the branch, or a branch fell through the branch, the remote drive-through was destroyed, something like that, that we can get that instantaneous from our facilities group, and then start making steps from there as far as to secure the location, and then from that point to start repairs.
And Natalie,
yeah, our facility team is a huge key in our crisis management response, and we do a lot of things electronically also or virtually. We'll utilize Microsoft Teams to chat in a command center format. So where, certainly in the COVID world, we can't be sitting across the table from each other. So we get almost instantaneous updates that have been filtered through our facility services team, our corporate properties, those local contractors, technicians, the boots on the ground to help with damage assessment, and pictures, photographs to provide that information back to the senior leadership group is certainly beneficial. And so everybody can see that information. It's not just going to a one source to digest it and provide it back to the group to make a decision. It's like I said, it's almost instantaneous. We can kind of see exactly what it looks like in a particular market or at a particular location after an event or a weather incident.
great. And Kyle, do you have a question for the group?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know, this is probably more for Natalie, since you have several hundred branches also. How do you get your alert information out to the areas, even the individual branches?
So the alert information would be the storm geo updates, or are you just
or whatever you utilize for that?
We've done a lot of tailoring, and rules-based distribution of those alerts. So as they come into a centralized mailbox, we can distribute the information from Storm Geo. We can scale it back. So we set up a lot of rules to provide, that particular information to a targeted group. Additionally, those crisis management updates that we send on a regular basis will include the forecast from Storm Geo. So we like to condense it and provide more focused information that would be for our impacted areas. So we rely on a lot of our senior leaders to communicate downstream. There's also another portal that we'll use internally where we'll kind of throw up the forecast track or the map, and everybody has access to see that information on our intranet. So any associate can go if they're interested in wanting to know what the forecast might be for a particular storm.
David, do you have, what about you? How do you distribute info, within your team or between facilities?
Our business continuity team is kind of the hub for communication out to all lines of business. And so that's done, through the updates, through email, but also we do have mass notification capabilities to send out text messaging to all key people's phones and in different regions, multiple regions at the same time. And so, depending on the threat, will depend on, how we communicate that out. But our business continuity is kind of the key communicators in crises like that.
Great. Well, thank you three for asking those questions. Very interesting. We do have one from the audience, and they say, you all seem to have handled the past year very well. How big are your teams and how have you driven efficiencies in your operations? Kyle, we'll start with you.
Well, technically a team of one, really, because incident response management, but I've got key people in corporate real estate, corporate security, human resources that I will bring into once we start it. So I kind of monitor it, but then once we do have any type of weather event, then we pull a core group of about 10 in that are my right and left hands, and they address it for their specific areas. And then if it's becoming a larger event, that'll probably expand out to maybe 30. And then if it's a major event that's going to impact a district or 2 districts or whatever, and that's when we'll start bringing in our executive leadership group in there so that they at least are aware of it. It'll get up to about 100, 110, something like that, as far as mainly for our communications. So it's a strange combination, but it's worked for us so far. I just can't go on vacation during hurricane season.
And Natalie, what about you?
Yeah, we have a similar format at First Horizon where, the team receives the weather alerts. Through me, we'll engage some of the players to start communications internally with the departments like corporate properties, IT, human resources, and then start having those conversations and expanding it to the larger groups from a crisis management perspective. But a lot of that initial, assessment goes on behind the scenes before it reaches to those levels. And so with the business resilience team and the focus on crisis management, we'll kind of start collaborating internally.
Okay. And David, how big are your teams and how have you driven efficiencies on your end?
On the facilities team, I have 7 regional managers and they're in all of our major markets. And, the adjustment, we were all on the road 2, 3, 4 days a week anyway. So the remote environment was not anything new. We really had very little adjustment other than, in regards to branch visits. We have a corporate real estate team that we will tap sometimes and use. We have a security team that specializes in security, and then we have our construction team for major projects. And so we've all adjusted well. A lot of those teams were remote most of the time anyways, so the adjustment was minimal. And then we have a vast network of vendors, of course, that we utilize. And so retraining and precautions of vendors, had to be done, but everybody was kind of on the same page there and adjusted successfully.
Great. Well, we'd like to thank you, Natalie, Kyle, and David, for participating in our webinar and sharing your expertise with us. It was very interesting. For our attendees, thank you as well for joining us. We will be sending this recording, and if there are any other questions, we'll answer those as well. Until then, everyone, including the panelists here, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.